scrotum, but the scrotal swelling is going to enlarge. And as the scrotal swelling goes down, it pulls on the gubernaculum, which helps to pull the testes. So the testes move down. As the animal grows, the gubernaculum shortens. They go through the inguinal canal and into the scrotum that's growing in size. And they eventually move into the scrotum, and these testes have descended. And that should be about birth. So in the female, there is also a ligament that runs all the way from the ovary in the female, all the way from the ovary through the inguinal canal. What is the counterpart of the scrotum in the female? Called the labia majora. That's the labia majus, M-A-J-U-S. It's the counterpart of the scrotum in the female. So it runs through the inguinal canal into the labia. There. But what happens is the ovaries in a female, they go down a little bit and they stop in the pelvic cavity. They don't go out any through. But there's a little ligament left attached to them, and that ligament that's attached to the ovaries is going to attach to the uterus, and then from the uterus it's going to go through the inguinal canal into the labia. But it doesn't weaken the wall. See? So when the testes go through the inguinal canal here, through this canal, it weakens the wall of the 3 aponeuroses, the 3 layers of connective tissue. So this is going to make the males much more prone to inguinal hernias than females. So anyway, we'll come back to hernias. So here is it in the male. They're coming down. As it goes through here, it goes through into the scrotum, and it becomes wrapped in tunics as it goes through. And it's actually quite complicated, the tunics, as it goes through. There. This is the hernia, but this shows you the tunics around the testis. So each testis, right? Testes, plural. No such word as testicle in anatomy. That's wrong. It's testis or testes. It goes through, and as it comes down here, this one, it's underneath the peritoneum. It's retroperitoneal, so it pinches off a piece of peritoneum with it. So it pinches it off, and half of a testis is wrapped with a bit of peritoneum. That's given a name. You don't have to know it, but it's called, believe it or not, it's called a tunica vaginalis. That's the tunic that wraps around it. And then, as it goes down, it takes with it the connective tissue layers of the external oblique, the internal oblique, and the transversus. So each testis is wrapped in a tunic, and it's multiple layers. You can actually peel them apart, and you'll get about 3 layers or so on it. Those are the connective tissue layers of the external oblique, the internal oblique, and the transversus. And actually 1/2 of it is wrapped in another layer, which is the peritoneum from here, which is called a tunica vaginalis. So it's quite complex. It's all wrapped in this thing. So what happens to the little gubernaculum? The gubernaculum is just left. That is why the testis is attached at the bottom of the scrotum. See? It's attached to the bottom of the scrotum, because that ligament that pulled it down is now just very, very short and attaches it to the bottom of the scrotal swelling. That is the descent of the testes.
But they move around in there.
Yeah, they move around in there, right? Because remember, what is the layers of the thing? We don't do this in human anatomy. We do much more detail than that. But if you cut through the scrotum, there is a dartos tunic, which is called around the scrotum, which is a connective tissue layer. That's okay. Then there's smooth muscle in the scrotum, so you cut through that. Now you're inside the scrotum. If you're inside the scrotum, you come across the testis, right? The testis is wrapped in all these layers. So the testis is wrapped in all these layers, and it can move within those layers, up and down. So it's like that.
Oh,
I think so. When it also, interestingly, when it came through this hole here, it took off a little of the internal oblique with it, right? It pinched off a little bit of the internal oblique muscle when it went through the hole, and those little slivers of internal oblique run down this spermatic cord to the testis, and that's called the cremaster muscle. So the cremaster muscle here can contract and pull the testis up, or let it go, relax and let it go down. Why?
Temperature control.
Temperature control. And so this, the little bits of muscle in here, is from the internal oblique. So that is voluntary skeletal muscle, right? Now, the muscle in the scrotum is smooth muscle, so that is involuntary. So, regardless of the mammal, well, not all mammals, but if you have external testes, right? When it's cold, what's going to happen? This muscle is going to contract, pull it up, and the scrotum is going to pucker up, smooth muscle, and bring it closer to the body to warm the testes. Why?
Cold water.
Yeah, any cold. Why? Because spermatogenesis in humans is optimal at a certain temperature, a warm body temperature. So when the person becomes hot, what happens is this muscle relaxes, the scrotal muscle, which is smooth muscle in the scrotum, relaxes, and the scrotum hangs down for temperature control. It moves it up and down for temperature control.
How did she say that was voluntary again?
Well, the muscle in here, strictly speaking, that controls this is a slip of the internal oblique. So, I mean, I guess if you could theoretically control your internal oblique muscle like that, you could control that voluntarily. But the scrotum is smooth muscle, so that's involuntary.
A hidden talent.
Yeah, literally hidden. So there it is, and it's gone into the scrotum, right? So it can be things. So what is that? Have you ever seen a scrotum in an elephant?
No.
You lift up the tail. Like, where is it? Right? No, some mammals have internal testes. See? They have internal testes. Other ones have testes that descend, go in and out. Because where do they go through? They go through the inguinal canal. Bats and I think rabbits. The testes descend through the inguinal canal in the reproductive season and withdraw into the body cavity in non-reproductive season. They move in and out. So the testes have gone through there. So you can have hernias. Now we've talked about different types of hernias. This is called an inguinal hernia. And there's two types of inguinal hernias. You don't have to know this again, but it's kind of cool. There's the direct and an indirect inguinal hernia. There they are there. This is the body wall. Here you can see there's the body wall. There is the testis in the scrotum. When it goes through that canal, it weakens the wall of the canal. So males have hernias, this type of inguinal hernias, much more than females because the testes went through them to weaken the body wall, right? Females didn't. And the difference between indirect and direct inguinal hernias is on which side of a vessel it pops out. So what happens typically is the viscera, this is the intestine, part of the intestine, gets forced through the inguinal canal, through this canal. If it goes under the canal, it's going to go under the skin and into the scrotum. So a piece of the intestine, or just a bulge, may not go all the way through, but it can go all the way through, can go right through into the scrotum. And it depends, the wrappings, how much wrappings it has around it depends on whether it's on this side of a vessel or this side. That's a direct versus an indirect inguinal hernia. And what it does, it pockets out into there, and now the scrotum will swell, will look very large on one side, typically one side, because one side is weakened more than the other, will look very large, and that's maybe intestine inside the scrotum. It could be just a bulge. It doesn't have to go all the way in there. It could be a bulge. And in the female, you can have it, but it is not as common in the female because nothing descends through the canal, right? So females can have inguinal hernias too. So what is going, if the scrotum bulges in the male, what is going to bulge in the female? The labia are going to bulge, right? When you typically see it, it could be congenital. It's very, some of these are very, very common in young children because the testes descended through the canal. So it's not an old man's disease, right? So it can be quite common in young children, and it could be also after strenuous exercise. It can cause hernias, lots of heavy weightlifting and stuff like that. Childbirth, straining after childbirth, quite commonly females get inguinal hernias. One labia is enlarged and then it typically withdraws and it becomes a non-problem later on. They can repair them too. They can push the stuff back up and put basically a patch in there and sew this, pull the muscle together and try and close up the little opening more and so on. There's different ways of repairing it. But one of the tests they do, shows you here in this, is a coughing test. When men, boys, whatever, did go for examination, the physician palpates the region of the groin right here and asks the person to cough. And if you feel the pressure surge when they cough, that could be a sign that there's one type of hernia. And the other one is they take the finger, and they push the finger, they palpate, they go up by the scrotum and push the finger sort of into the scrotal skin and push it up a little bit like this and palpate up there, and you can feel the hole almost where the hernia, where the testis comes through, and then tell them to cough. And that if you feel that pulsing there like that, that could be a different form of hernia. It's very common. I mean, we have people, every lab we do it, every time we have this lab, there's always students in here that have had hernias. So inguinal hernias. So you can have inguinal hernias. Now, here is the big femoral artery and vein, right here. So here is the inguinal canal, right there. And right beside it is the femoral canal. You can have a femoral hernia, where the viscera gets pushed through that canal. Why? Because that's where the big femoral arteries and veins come through the body wall, right